Hello, welcome to my channel. You're watching What Helen Reads and I'm Helen, and today I've got a reading vlog for you. So if you watch any of my videos, you know I normally sit a little bit closer, but I wanted to sit a bit further back today so that I could show off my Welcome to Entrance t-shirt, which is home of the fallen MC. And this is a little bookish gift to myself. If you read my kind of wrap up from Rare 24 in Edinburgh, then you'll know that one of the things I ordered from Gianna Darling was this t-shirt. Unfortunately, she had custom issues and she wasn't able to get the t-shirts into the country in time for that readathon, but following that she posted the t-shirts out to everybody, and I just want to show you the packaging that came in as well, because when it arrived this week it came in this really cool kind of like jiffy bag. I'm really reluctant to throw this away, but it says "Asking for Trouble, the Fallen Men," and then Bona and Claire, and then on the back it says, "Are you ready to patch into the fallen MC?" And I've just folded it over there to hide my the address label, but I just wanted to show you that packaging because I thought it was really cool that she's got her own jiffy bags as well. And I also got some artwork which was you know, not safe for work, that came in as well, and on the back it says "Asking for Trouble, Gianna Darling." So that was really nice to receive earlier this week. Okay, so like I said, today I am starting a reading vlog, and this was inspired by Amazon actually, because I obviously shop with Amazon. I have a Prime membership and I'm also subscribed to Kindle Unlimited and their Audible subscriptions as well. So I get quite a lot of emails from Amazon advertising books to me, telling me when you know, books are being released, and also providing recommendations. So there's one email in particular that I get every week. I'm sure if you're subscribed to their mailing list you get these as well, but it basically is titled "This Week's Reading List for Helen." And I thought to myself, you know, these always come through, I always glance at them, but mainly I just delete them, because often the books on there aren't necessarily that interesting. Often they're actually books that I've read before. But there was one email that I got recently and there was a couple of interesting books on here, and I thought, you know what, it might make a good reading vlog where I basically read some of Amazon's suggestions, review them, and then kind of like rate how good I think Amazon are at recommending books to me. So this might be kind of a first in a series. I might do a couple of these over the coming months, just to kind of, you know, give Amazon an average rating, because, you know, we can't completely judge them based on one email alone. Now on total on here there were 10 books that were recommended, and they're in different sections. So the first one was recommended books for you, then for you in literature and fiction, trending for you, and then books by authors that you follow. Now on this email, the first one that was recommended to me was Salt Kiss by Simone. Now when I first got this email, I'd never read anything by Simone before, but she was an author that was on my kind of TBR because I'd heard great things about her writing. She writes the kind of books that I like to read, and so I was very intrigued. Salt Kiss, which is the one that Amazon have recommended, is book 1 of the Lioness series, and this series is actually a duet. But recently I did actually read the prequel to this duet, which is called Salt in the Wound, which is kind of just like a novella length book. It was just 172 pages, but really kind of sets this one up. And as a result of reading that one, I am very intrigued about this duet. So I thought, good start for Amazon there, and that is definitely one that I'll be reading during this reading vlog. Then in the next section, for you in literature and fiction, there was a couple of mafia romances in here, which obviously, you know, I read a lot of mafia, so that's good. The first one was His to Protect by Ava Gray. When I looked at this one now, this is actually book 2 in a series. I haven't read book 1, so I have decided that I'm going to actually pick up and read His to Own by Ava Gray, which is the first one in this series. Then the other one that I picked to read was Dark Prince by Crowne. That's also another mafia romance. It looks like it's kind of an age gap forced marriage. And then the other 2 books in here that have been recommended is Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver, and the second book in that series, Leather and Lark, by the same author. Now again, I am very intrigued by Butcher and Blackbird. It might be something I get to eventually, but isn't on my immediate book list to read. But again, I thought that was a good pick from Amazon. Next, there was a book that did really intrigue me. I was really torn with actually picking this one up, and I might put it on my TBR to read at a point in the future. But it was called Little Stranger by Lee Rivers, which is book one of a duet, which is called The Web of Silence. It's got a really interesting front cover, and I'll put it up on the screen because it's kind of got like a big spider on the front. So like I say, I was quite intrigued by this one. And basically it says it's a dark taboo romance, and there's not much to the blurb, but it basically seems like a kind of a revenge sort of plot, a bit of a stalker. So the main female character betrayed our hero, and now he wants revenge against the foster sister who became his forbidden obsession the second he laid eyes on her. After she sends him to prison for years, he's free and ready to haunt her. Everything about Olivia belongs to Malachi Vise, and on Halloween night he can no longer lurk in the shadows. All he has left to do is own her heart, even if he needs to take it. So I was actually really intrigued by that one, and like I say, I might actually pick that up at some point, but I'm not going to include it in the reading blog. Then the others that have been recommended, which is books by authors that I follow. One of them was Stolen Air by Sophie Lark. So I have read the first book in that series, which is the Brutal Birthright series. I've read the first book, which is Brutal Prince. I've recently just got a copy of Stolen Air, so I'll be reading that soon, but not for this reading vlog. And then the other one that had been recommended was Blood of My Monster by Rena Kent, which is obviously another mafia romance. Now, I have read a few of Rena Kent's before. I actually love the Legacy of the Gods series, and I've read a couple of the, the parent books in the past, but not this particular one. So again, it is something that I potentially would read in the future. But I've got so many other things on my TBRs that I really want to get to before that I've decided not to pick that one up at this point in time. And then from a more books to explore perspective, Amazon also recommended to me Consider Me and Play With Me by Becca Mack. And this is an author I've obviously heard of, but haven't read anything by this author before. So like I said, in summary, I'm going to read 3 books for this reading vlog. I'm going to read Salt Kiss by Simone, His to Own by Ava Gray, and then Dark Prince by Casey Crowne. So hopefully the next clip you'll see will be of me starting on my reading vlog journey. I apologise for where I may be sitting or what I maybe look like, because I'm just going to jump right in from wherever I am. And normally I read in the evening sitting on my sofa, and my hair and makeup will not be done. So thank you very much for watching, and on to the next clip. So the first one I'm going to start with is His to Own by Ava Gray. This is a mafia romance, and it's a fairly short read at just 232 pages. So the blurb says, he's supposed to marry her older sister, but he can't stay away. The mafia world is cold and cruel. I live by one rule: cut their throat before they cut yours. It's what keeps me ruthless and on top of my mafia family. But when I see something I like, I take it. It's no different with Alessia DeLuca, who's supposed to marry my rival, while I'm marrying her older sister. When Alessia sees something she shouldn't, kidnapping her is the only logical answer. Taking her cherry sure isn't. And then from Alessia's point of view, she says, ever since I met him in a mix-up, I've been intrigued by Marcella Rossi. He says he always gets what he wants, and it's obvious he's obsessed with one thing only, me. He can force me to marry him, he can even force me to wear his ring, but I'll make sure I'm the worst wife he could have. Anything to make sure he doesn't realise how much I want him. So like I say, this one was recommended to me by Amazon via an email, which was for my weekly reading recommendations. It's actually got quite good reviews on Amazon at 4.4 stars with 3,499 reviews, so we'll see how we get on. And I'm going to dive in now, and I'll report back after I've probably read the first about 20% and let you know how I'm getting on. Okay, so I'm already 30% into the book, and it's going really quickly, which makes sense because it's only 232 pages. So in terms of my thoughts so far, this is definitely sort of fast-paced. Obviously, with so few pages, things are moving very quickly, and our characters are definitely coming to instant conclusions about how they feel about each other, rather than them, taking the time to get to know each other. Also, so far, there's not too much of a plot, and there's not actually that many characters in this so far. So what's happened so far is that we have our main heroine, Alessia, and she's got a sister called Gia. Now, Gia is 26 years old. She's previously had a boyfriend, been in love, they broke up, and she's kind of been left a bit heartbroken. Meanwhile, our main female character, Alessia, is 24. She's never had any kind of relationship before, so she's never even been kissed. But both sort of daughters, if you like, both of the sisters are up for an arranged marriage. And Gia, the older sister, is supposed to be marrying Marcella, and Alessia, the younger sister, is supposed to be marrying Rocco. So basically they're going to be arranged in marriage. They've never met their partners before. So on one particular day, both sisters are set to meet their future husbands as arranged by their families. The thing is, there's a bit of a mix-up because Gia ends up going into the library, and Alessia ends up going into the drawing room, and basically the wrong men are waiting for them. So Alessia actually ends up meeting Marcella. They have a really cool meet and cute. They instantly like each other, and Marcella really takes a liking to her straight away. And then he realises that he's not speaking to Gia, who is the person he's supposed to be marrying. He's actually speaking to the younger sister. So he decides that he wants to marry the younger sister instead. Meanwhile, Rocco also wants to marry the younger sister, and so when Marcella goes to the dad and says, I don't want to marry the older sister, I want to marry the younger one, he basically says no, because she's already kind of like arranged in marriage to Rocco, so he's not going to back down on that, and that is kind of final. And so Marcella is not too happy about this, but can't do anything about it. The thing is, Rocco himself has a really, really bad reputation. He's a particularly evil mafia person, and there's a rumour that he unalived his previous girlfriend. And so, Alessia herself doesn't want to marry this person. And so she hatches a plan with her sister to basically run away. And so she goes off to the train station to catch a train to kind of, escape, and so she doesn't have to go through with this marriage. Of course, at this point, Marcelli has determined that he wants Alessia for himself, starts to do a bit of stalking, and happens to follow her to the train station. And it's very lucky that he did, because somebody is there with a gun and attempts to shoot at our heroine. Of course, Marcelli is going to save her, and then puts her into his SUV and drives her back to his apartment in New York City, and essentially kidnaps her. And he decides that the person was sent to unalive her, that he's rescued her, and now the only way that he's going to keep her safe is to marry him and, put her under his family's protection. The thing is, this has all happened obviously in the first part of this book, which, yes, it is 30% in, but like I said, it's not too long a book. The thing is, we've seen no other characters. We haven't seen Marcelli as a boss. We've not seen him kind of interact with other mafia people. He hasn't got any security. He doesn't seem to have a second in command, and no investigation is underway in terms of who this kind of a potential assassin is. It's just, all assumptions. And so, like I said, it is fast paced. It is a bit of fun, but as it stands at the moment, I think it's going to be a pretty forgettable mafia tale, and that will keep me entertained while I'm reading it, but nothing that I will remember too well once I've finished it. But let's see how the rest of the book goes, and I'll check in when I finish reading it. Okay, so I've just finished reading my first book, His to Own by Ava Gray. And I read it all in one sitting. It was a pretty short read, 232 pages, like I said. So because of that, I think the story was a little bit lacking in plot, and there wasn't enough time for character development or development of the relationship. And I also thought it was a fairly strange mafia romance, in the sense that he was supposed to be head of his family, and he did have a family, but his parents lived back in Sicily, and he was the head of one of 5 families in New York. But there was no kind of mafia activity. We didn't see him, kind of at work, if you like. He didn't seem to have any, men that reported to him. He had a kind of a butler who kind of was his kind of housekeeper. And he also had one bodyguard who was a kind of a long-time friend Other than that, he didn't really seem to have any other men around him, which I felt really, really strange. But again, I don't know if it's just because the author didn't allow enough time to kind of develop additional characters or kind of flesh out kind of like this mafia world that they were supposed to be living in. So I'm not sure kind of where I got up to at the last point, but obviously he, you know, as the story develops, I think I mentioned that she was kind of attacked and he rescued her, took her back to his place and then suggested they get married, so that, you know, she would be protective because of his name. So pretty standard sort of plot point really, like we get in many other mafia romances. However, I just don't think it was executed very well. And everything really happened really quickly. And I even like took some pictures so that I could refer to them later. But things that just didn't really kind of ring true, or again, not enough time in the book for the characters to really develop. One of those things was the fact that literally within 24 hours of meeting each other, she runs away. He kind of kidnaps her. They kind of get married. So everything happens pretty much within 48 hours. And then from there, the dad was supposed to be really, really angry that he'd kidnapped the daughter, but was then kind of relented. Then, like I said, the other guy that was supposed to marry her originally is this Rocco guy, and he's like not a nice person at all, and he's pretty upset about the marriage in general, and he very much thinks that Marcella stole something from him. So obviously he's going to be the person that's going to cause the biggest amount of drama, and he's going to, you know, be the third act conflict, shall we say, in the story. And as a result, there was just a couple of little things that I just had to circle in the book and then chuckle to myself. Because one example was, like I say, it was literally 24 hours and they got married. And so obviously he got his butler to go and get some rings, like wedding ring options from the jeweller. He picked a ring, and when he first gave it to her, it was too big for her. Literally another 24 hours passes, no mention of this ring happens again. And his family sort of turn up to meet her, and then obviously they want to look at the ring, and she shows the ring, and basically the sentence says, as Carlotta checks out my ring, which now fits my finger perfectly after being sized, I glance back at Marcelo with a helpless chuckle, and he shrugs. And it's like, how did they have time to resize the ring? No mention of this ring had happened. Like, no attempt at the jeweler, no measuring the finger, nothing. It's just literally within the space of 24 hours, this ring is magically resized and now fits her perfectly. And then another thing is that, again, as soon as they're married, they consummate their relationship and they have unprotected sex. And from that moment on, there's constant talk that she's pregnant. Now, I know that that can happen. Obviously, if you have unprotected sex, there is a chance that you could be pregnant. But literally, they just assume that she is pregnant right from the very first day. And I just felt like it was a little bit unbelievable in the sense that some people, you know, try for years to get pregnant and then don't. So, of course, I know it can happen, but it just felt like literally you've been married literally 24 hours, you've slept with him once, and suddenly you're pregnant. And then there's a part in the book where she decides that she's going to get a checkup from the doctor because she senses that she's pregnant. So basically, she says to him that she needs to go to the doctor, and he asked her if there's anything wrong. She said, no, just a checkup, because she said, I'm not being completely upfront with him, and the truth is I have a nagging suspicion that I might be pregnant. But that is the last thing I want to say to him. So, like I say, this fixation on this like immediate pregnancy, which the author did need to weave into the book because it becomes a bit of a plot point later, but I just thought that was a little bit ridiculous. And then it's not until an incident happens later where, you know, the third act conflict is going to come in with the big drama that kind of goes down, and suddenly this mafia guy who had literally no one but a butler and a bodyguard suddenly has enforcers, because then his brother says, well, we could send some men to check it out. It's like, what men? We haven't seen or heard of any men before now. And then, you know, when all seems lost, he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know who's the perpetrator of events, shall we say. Then a crazy idea comes to him where he says, I rule this city and have eyes and ears everywhere. So why not put out a 911 bulletin to all of my enforcers and informers, to every single contact I have in the underworld? Yes, that would be a good idea, wouldn't it? But who are these enforcers and informers? Because we haven't seen them at all for the rest of the book. And it's kind of like this light bulb moment where he goes, hang on a minute, I can send some men to investigate this. Why didn't you have men working for you before? Because stuff's been going down for a while. But then I have to remind myself that this is all obviously taking place in the space of about 48 hours. So maybe that's why we didn't see them or didn't hear about them before. Anyway, I guess they're small little things, but I kind of wanted to pull them out because I did find it amusing. Overall, I've enjoyed my evening. It was a fun, quick read, very predictable, as I said before, pretty forgettable. And as a result, I think because of the length of the book, the fact that the characters really weren't developed, the romance wasn't really very developed, and the plot was just very thin and very obvious, then overall I've rated this one 3 stars. So that's it for this clip, but I'll check back in with you before I start my next book. Okay, so the next book that I've decided to pick up is The Dark Prince by Casey Crowne, because I was in the mood for another mafia romance. And I also needed a slightly shorter read, and this one is less than 300 pages. It sits at 270 pages, just because I have been behind the last couple of months and I really want to kind of get off to a good start this month and feel like I'm accomplishing something. So I actually started this one last night and I'm already 50% of the way in, so I'm hoping to finish it this evening. This particular book is book 1 in the Chicago Bratva series, and it's an age gap forced marriage mafia romance. So the blurb on this one says, I'm at a sinister party, dragged here by my wicked stepmother. Strangers' knowing glances send shivers down my spine. A horrifying truth hits me. This isn't just any party, it's my goddamn wedding night. Towering above me, 1.5 feet taller, Lucian Ivanov. Cold-hearted killer, feared by all, including me. My stepmother sold my soul to the devil. I plot my escape, but a shocking discovery halts me. Unexpectedly pregnant with Lucian's child, I see him transform entirely. Now a fiercely devoted husband who vows to protect his family at all cost. One chilling question seeps into my mind. Can I ever truly escape the devil, or am I bound to him forever? So like I say, I'm already 50% into this particular book and I'm not sure how I feel about it. If you actually look at the reviews and ratings, particularly on Goodreads, they really aren't that good. And the book is listed twice, one as sort of book 1 in this Mafia series and the other one is book 18 or number 18 in the Silver Daddies series. But the book has got 3.09 stars for one version of this book, and for the Silver Fox Daddies, like I say, this one has got 3.86. So like I say, I'm not really sure how I feel about this one yet. It's actually quite well written, very few typos or anything like that, but it is quite fast paced from a story perspective in terms of how the characters interact with each other, and as a result I'm missing kind of any kind of emotion. We're kind of just being told what the story is and I'm not really connecting with these characters or this particular romance. And also the heroine is one of those types of heroines that is constantly making poor decisions and is really starting to annoy me, but not just any poor decisions, the classic ones, and I'll explain more in a minute. But this one also has kind of a fairy tale retelling sort of vibe. Not a specific fairy tale, but what we have here is a heroine, Maura, who is like an Irish mafia princess, and her dad was head of the mafia and he married this woman. I can't remember her name, but I want to say it's Stella or something like that. But anyway, he married this woman, her father then died, and now this woman is kind of in charge of this particular mafia, Irish mafia family. And of course, she's been really, really horrible to the daughter. So she is the wicked stepmother. So she is the quintessential wicked stepmother who is very manipulative and sort of cruel and very fake. You know, she pretends to be, you know, my daughter, call me mother. But really, you know, she is only looking out for herself. She's also got a horrible henchman, basically, who is physically kind of abusive to the daughter as well, but at the mother's command. So if she does something the mother doesn't like, then she sends her bodyguard, if you like, to kind of punish the daughter. So that's kind of the setup. And then what we also learn is that the father actually left some inheritance to her, and the mother has squandered pretty much all of the family fortune and is now wanting money from her stepdaughter. Now, the mother has also then sold her off as a marriage, as an arranged marriage to the head of the Bratva, and that is our hero, Lucian, who they call Luke. And yeah, and basically this book very much starts where she turns up at a party that she's forced to go to by her stepmother, and then when she gets there she realises that it's not a party at all, it's actually her wedding, and then she basically gets married. You know, she does sort of object, but she doesn't attempt to escape. And instantly she sees the groom, and although she's heard very horrible things about him, knows he's a violent man, obviously immediately she's attracted to him. And then at the wedding reception there is an attempt on her life, so now there's this assassin who is trying to unalive her. And so then the husband becomes very protective of her, and obviously then says, you can't go anywhere without a bodyguard, the usual routine. Of course, what does our heroine do? She goes somewhere without her bodyguard. And this is the sort of bit that's actually quite frustrating. We're now 50% in. There's already been several attempts at her life. And although she knows she's in danger, she still keeps sneaking out without her husband knowing, or taking a bodyguard with her, which, you know, really kind of annoys me. The other thing is that this couple has great chemistry together. It's clear that he is a dominant. He wants her to be submissive in the bedroom, but because she was a virgin when they got married, he's obviously taken it gently, which is great. But of course there is that sort of evil ex-girlfriend who's really jealous that he's married somebody else and not her. And of course she turns up to sow a seed of doubt into the heroine's mind. And again, this is another sort of plot sort of device that I absolutely hate, where everything was going really well. She was really starting to trust this guy. They were really, you know, liking each other. He's been nothing but nice to her, not at all like a normal Bratva mafia guy at all. And yet she believes this random woman who turned up and accosted her in a flower shop that, you know, this guy is not very nice, and, you know, she'll regret marrying him and all of this. So now there's this seed in her mind, of course, that, you know, is evil. But of course we know he's evil. He's the head of the Bratva. So these whole sort of plot devices really annoy me. And like I say, now we're at the 50% mark, where there's been 3 attempts on her life already. She is currently in hospital from the latest attempt, and the doctor has just told her she's pregnant. And of course, she isn't going to immediately tell Luke that she's pregnant. So we're at a point in time now where I'm pretty frustrated with the heroine. The hero is doing everything he can to, you know, make her feel comfortable, you know, get her trust, and he's starting to have feelings for her. And although she really likes him, like I say, she's just, you know, keeping him at arm's length, and also now sneaking around behind his back without any kind of protection from a bodyguard. So no sympathy for her whatsoever. I'm really hoping this one is going to turn and end up well. But what I'll do is I'll carry on reading, and I'll check in later, either if there's a bit that I really want to tell you about immediately, or when I finish the book at the end. So check back in with you later. Okay, so I've just finished Dark Prince, and I am rating it 3 stars. So I gave a bit of an update midway, just about really not connecting with characters, with the romance. I thought some of the characters are really one-dimensional. The evil stepmother in particular, it was just a caricature of a typical wicked stepmother / villainess. And also the main female character was just really annoying with her continued poor decisions. And it just carried on from there, really. It was pretty obvious with the plot. Also, some of it didn't really hang together very well. It felt like the characters weren't properly fleshed out, and the story was quite sort of skippy. There was some things that you kind of just had to take at face value in terms of what the characters were saying to each other. And it did make me laugh, because there was one part in here where they talked about honesty, and how honesty was the foundation of their relationship and the thing that kept them strong amidst all the chaos. And yet I can't think of what single time that the main female character was honest with the hero. She constantly snuck out without telling him she was going somewhere. She finds out that she's pregnant and doesn't tell him that she's pregnant for quite some time. And she also is keeping a secret in terms of, you know, who the assassin actually is. She's got a strong suspicion. She's done a little bit of digging, hence why she keeps sneaking out. And she doesn't tell him any of this either. So I did have to smile at that part as well, where they were saying that honesty was the foundation of their relationship. Yeah, so a little bit lackluster, nothing terrible in there. It wasn't particularly badly written. There was very few typos or anything like that. I just didn't think the story was particularly fully formed, and like I say, didn't really connect with the characters or the romance. So probably would not read anything else from this author or continue with this particular series. Anyway, we have one final book to go, which is a Sierra Simone. So I have much higher expectations for that. But so far, Amazon are not doing too well with their reading recommendations. 2 books are down with 1 book left to go. And I really am hoping that I've saved the best book for last, and I'm sure that I absolutely have. I cannot imagine that this final book won't trump both of the ones that I've read before, because I'm about to pick up Salt Kiss by Sierra Simone, and this is book 1 in the Lioness duet, but I have read the prequel to this duet, which was Salt in the Wound. That book clearly sets up this one, and it is not exactly a parallel timeline, but definitely happened before, and now we've almost caught up to where we were at the end of that prequel. So this one basically is following Mark Trevenna. Now what we know about Mark, and we knew this from the prequel, is that he is sort of ex-military, ex-CIA, and he set up this sex club called Lioness. And basically in the sex club the members are very wealthy, powerful, famous people. A lot of them are politicians or military people, and Mark doesn't take payment for membership at this club. What he does is deals in information, and so he seems to have his fingers in a lot of pies. Now he's a very dark, mysterious man. He's clearly got an agenda and we don't know what it is, and so it's really interesting to you know, start piecing together the puzzles from what I knew from the prequel and what I've already pieced together in this book, because I have already read about 29% of this book, so almost a third of the way through. What we also know from the prequel is that Mark is due to get married to Isolde, who we saw in the prequel, and basically it's kind of a sort of an arranged marriage, if you like. So Mark and her father are doing some sort of business, and basically her father wants her very much to marry Mark because her father is a banker, and he feels like with the information that Mark has and the alliance between their families, it will make their banking business much more successful, and obviously he's got information he can share with Mark. We don't 100% know Mark's motivations for agreeing to this, because it seems like he doesn't really need her father's help, but nevertheless he's agreed to it. What we know about Isolde is that she is a virgin, but she's also devoutly religious, and what she really wanted to do is basically join a convent and become a nun. And her uncle is a very senior sort of person in the church, in the Catholic Church, and also seems to be in like the spy business, so doing illicit spy things for the church, but we're not exactly sure what. But it's clear he's been training Isolde from when she's been a child to almost help him spy, and in fact, while she really didn't want to marry Mark, her uncle is the one that's convinced her that it's the right thing to do and that she could serve God much better marrying Mark and spying on him basically, rather than becoming a nun. So that's kind of where we ended the prequel, where she was on her way to basically get married to Mark, and in fact it was his bodyguard that had gone to collect her to bring her to the wedding. And so this duet starts where Mark is recruiting a new bodyguard, and that's where our main character for this one comes in, Tristan. So I'll just read you the blurb for this book. So basically, after being a soldier, working as a bodyguard should have been simple. Keep the owner of DC's ultra secret club safe. Don't think about his midnight eyes or his devil's smile. Don't surrender my body to his wicked desires. But I underestimated Mark Trevina and the power of his dark, seductive world. I underestimated the hold he'd have on me, the way I would do anything for him at all. And so when he asked me to escort his soon-to-be bride home, I can only, miserably, heartbrokenly, say yes. Isolde is nothing like I expect, however. Quiet and lonely and sharp, a girl who likes knives and God, a girl whose nightmares echo my own, and one night while sailing under the cold stars we share a reckless, tear-soaked kiss. I'm doomed. Falling in love with Mark was one thing, but his bride too. Being in love with a husband and wife at the same time. Torture, misery, a tragedy if tragedies came with bruises, sweat, sighs. But it isn't enough to merely fall into the forbidden, because in Mark Trevina's world, the fall is only the beginning. So I think we're going to end up with an MMF relationship here, and possibly even a love triangle in this sort of first book, because like I said, so far what's happened is Mark has recruited a new bodyguard. He's picked Tristan because Tristan was in the military. He's been serving for about 8 years, and he's recently left the military because he ended up having to unalive his best friend, who had kind of like turned traitor against the country. And so he has kind of a lot of PTSD, a lot of nightmares. People consider him a hero, but Tristan definitely doesn't see himself as a hero, and he's really struggling. But he knows that he can't really get a normal job, and so when Mark offers him a job as his bodyguard, he ends up saying yes. Of course, it comes with lots of rules and caveats. At first he has to sign an NDA because he's going to be obviously spending all of his time with Mark at this club, seeing people do things, but also hearing conversations, so potentially is privy to very sensitive information as well. Now, we also know at this point that Mark has very specifically picked Tristan for the job, and it's very interesting because he happens to be his kind of like nephew-in-law in a way, because his sister has married Tristan's father. So then now they're kind of connected through marriage, yeah, he's deliberately picked Tristan for this task. Why, we don't yet know, but like I said, we know Mark has definitely got a hidden agenda. And the thing with Tristan is that he is 28, 29, but he is also a virgin, and he is also seemingly bisexual. So while he's never had any kind of like sexual experiences himself, he very much recognises that he is sexually interested in different things, and since being at the club he's very, very interested in having a relationship with Mark and also being submissive. So just as I've put the book down to come and give you an update, Tristan has kind of offered himself to Mark, and at this point Mark has turned him down because he's sort of saying, no, because I'm not 100% sure you understand what you're getting yourself into. I'm not a good person and I have specific tastes, and also I've been working really hard for the last year on, you know, a little project, and us being together may jeopardise that. So for now he has turned Tristan down, so we're going to have to see what happens next. But so far I'm enjoying it. I'm very intrigued. Mark is still very much an enigma, and so far we haven't had his POV at all in this book, so we have no idea what he's thinking or what he's plotting. So very intrigued to learn more, and I'll be cracking on now, and I'll check back in with you when I've got another update. Hello, well, it's been a week since my last check-in, and I've definitely finished Salt Kiss, and not only that, but I've read some other books as well. Unfortunately, I didn't finish it before I had to go on a work trip, which is why I wasn't able to immediately vlog about this book. And so there has been several days that have passed since I've finished it, and therefore my kind of thoughts have been left to ruminate, shall we say. but I am very pleased to confirm that it was definitely the best book of the 3 that I read, and I'm glad that Amazon recommended this particular one to me. And then really picking up from the last instalment, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that eventually Tristan and Mark do start a relationship together. And we know that Mark is fairly torn about this in one way, because he knows it's going to potentially jeopardise his relationship with Isolde in the future. However, he says repeatedly, you know, that he's a very selfish man, and he just can't stay away from Tristan. He really kind of wants to be with him and also be his dominant, and they do very much start this sort of BDSM sort of relationship where Mark is very much the dominant, Tristan is very much the submissive. It does get extremely spicy, and Mark is quite an aggressive lover and also likes to inflict pain on his partners, so that is an element of it as well. So this book kind of goes on for about 60%. So up until 60%, the book is just purely on Mark and Tristan, and we don't see anything of Isolde at all. And in fact, if you hadn't read the prequel to this book, you probably wouldn't know too much about her or that she's on the horizon. And certainly Tristan doesn't know about it either. And so he starts to hear people saying specific things, and there's some hint of a wedding basically, and slowly but surely Tristan starts to piece it together and realises that Mark is in fact engaged to someone and that the wedding is going to be in a couple of months' time, and he's absolutely horrified, but also extremely heartbroken about this as well, because he'd started to develop real feelings for Mark, and was becoming pretty obsessed with Mark and being with Mark, and then to find out that he is in fact engaged to somebody else and going to be married, it leaves him pretty upset and heartbroken. But of course he can't really have any of these conversations with Mark directly, because you know, their relationship very much started out as purely an arrangement, and as we know, Mark is kind of this sort of dark, mysterious kind of figure, and seemingly doesn't really have emotions, although we have started to get a bit of a glimpse into his life and realise that at some point in the past he has had a relationship, and potentially his partner passed away, or is no longer around. We're not exactly sure why, but we're starting to piece together that maybe Mark is after revenge in some way for something that happened in the past. So that's all we really know, and we never get Mark's POV in this book, so we're really not sure what he's thinking at all, or what his motivations are, or what his grand plan is, but clearly he has one. Anyway, when we get to about the 60% mark, like I said, Tristan figures out that Mark is going to be married, and then there's an incident at the sex club Lioness, and Mark is injured, and it's coming up to the point where he needs to go to Ireland basically to collect his bride, so to collect Isolde, and he's not well enough to go and get her, so he basically asks Tristan if he will go and get his bride for him, basically bring her back, and not only that, but they're going to come back on a super yacht, because Mark had planned for them to sail back to America in a super yacht, to give Isolde a couple of weeks to rest and relax kind of before the wedding, and Tristan again is not happy about this. One, he doesn't want to leave Mark when he's injured, but also it kind of, again, like, it breaks his heart that he's going to have to go and bring back someone who's going to essentially replace him in Mark's life. So he very reluctantly agrees to go, and he does go and collect Isolde, and then they are now in close proximity together on the yacht, and they start to develop a relationship as well. This book ends on quite a cliffhanger, and I am excited to read the second part of the duet, which I probably will end up reading in November. Now, having reflected on this one, I decided to rate this one 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. I think it's really interesting. The characters are interesting, and Mark is very intriguing. However, I'm going to hold off giving it any more stars than that until I've read the final part of the duet, because I think it will very much depend on Mark, and what happens between the 3 of these characters, before I kind of like fully decide how I feel about this story overall. So there we go, that is the end of my reading vlog, where I read 3 books that were recommended to me by Amazon. Now, Now obviously 2 out of the 3 I didn't rate as highly as the 4th one, but still they are the sorts of books that I would normally read, so I guess that's when Amazon were coming from right in terms of recommending kind of dark mafia romances to me, as well as this the final book by Simone. So I think I'll go back to you know, checking out any emails that Amazon send to me, but remain cautious about the books that I choose to pick up as a result. Well, thank you very much for coming on this journey with me. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me. And all that's left to do is to say thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. So basically we're following, like I say, Mark and what was the last book I read? It was not very good, was it? So hopefully I'll record a proper introduction to this video, but the purpose of this video is to not listen to my husband opening cans of pop. Right. I thought what I'd do is I would pick a couple of books on the, and I thought what I would do is pick a couple of books from the reading list. No, that's not what I was going to do either. But recently I did actually read the prequel to this duet, which was called What?